we're here. This is the very last video lesson. You deserve a huge trophy for getting through this. So this will be one more day of my just goofy paper on the screen. I really can't find a better way to do this. Please forgive me. I don't have a webcam set up. COVID, there are no decent ones available. So I am struggling technologically, but I still think this is the best way to do it, right? So I will check in a couple times. I'll try to goof off. So here we go. Our last lesson of the semester. All right. Hi. We're back at our little construction paper workbench. Here we are. Now I want to start by looking at this example. And this is an example that, yes, you can solve right away. You should be able to look at that and see that this is the easiest proof ever. But I want to show you that if you use this same sort of strategy, if I am getting into your head and you're starting to say the things that I say in your mind as you're doing this, you can do complicated examples. Our strategy is the same. So let's walk through this example as if it's difficult so I can show you this. So basic strategy. We work backwards. Remember, we are cheating at the maze. We are going to go from our goal and work all the way back, making notes till we get to our premises. Good? So we're going to outline everything before we start. So for this one, this is our goal. Our goal is A and B. And what do we always say? We ask ourselves, do I see my goal in my premises? Do you see A and B in your premises that you can take out? No. So what does that tell you? That tells you that I am going to need to create that connective. So I'm going to need to create what? Well, the main connective is an and. So I go and look at my rule sheet for an and introduction, and those will be my goals. What does an and introduction say? It says if you're trying to create an and, you need to first prove each side and then put it together to create your new and. Well, that's it. So here are our sub-goals. Our sub-goal is A, we've got it. Sub-goal is B, we've got it. And so now we can create our new and. That's really easy. So see how it goes. So now we can simply say A is true, B is true. That is my goal. It is based on what rule? The and introduction rule. I look at my rule sheet. How many lines of justification does that rule require? 2, the 2 sentences I put together. Where are they? Lines 1, line 2. Okay, now, that is a really simple proof, but when you get to the difficult proofs we're about to do, you will think the same way you just thought. All right, so here we go. So make sure you have written this down on a piece of paper and you're working together with me, and here we go. We have this one. We do not get scared. We follow our same protocol. We look at our goal and we make sure that we focus on it, right? I draw a box around it just so visually I know I can't stop till I get there. And then what do? I ask myself, do I see my goal in my premises? Do you see negative A anywhere in your premises that you can take out? No, of course not. I don't see it anywhere. Well, what is the main connective of our goal? It's a negation. So obviously I'm going to need to create a negation. So I make a little note. I go and look at my rule sheet. I will be needing to introduce a negation. And so I simply follow what the rule says. Now, of course, I'm being nice, so the rule looks a lot like this proof. But what does it say to do? It says to begin by assuming the positive of your goal. So I will first begin by assuming the positive of my goal. And then what does it say? It says your next step is to derive a contradiction. So I will try to derive a contradiction, and then when I do that, I can negate my assumption. If you assume something and it leads to an impossibility, then your assumption was wrong. All right, so let's do that. So these are our steps we're going to go through. So the first thing I do is assume the positive. Notice, even if A existed in my proof, it doesn't. I can't take the left side of a conditional. But even if I had A, I still do what the rule says. And I assume the positive of my goal. So I assume positive A. Now notice what I'm going to do. I still need to justify every move in my proof, and this one is an assumption. You can abbreviate in a way if you want to be immature and write the A word, right? I'll just write AS because I don't want to start laughing. So here is a little note I do. Whenever I make an assumption, I make a little note next to it. I'm going to make a little asterisk here, and I make a little note to myself, reminding myself that this is the rule that told me to make that assumption. So in parentheses, I write that because remember, an assumption is not legal until you use the rule that requires it. So I am going to know that this assumption is out there and it is illegal until I invoke that rule. And then I will, remember our word, then we can discharge our assumption. Discharge is always a fun thing, right? Whether it's pooping or sex, right? Discharge is always our goal if we're doing well in our lives. So, gosh, I'm sorry. All right. So now we've got our first step. I assume the positive. And now I'm trying to derive a contradiction. I am trying to find a sentence that's impossible. Well, notice this one. Well, look at what's staring at us. Here is B, and here is not B. So if we could isolate those and put them together, we would have a contradiction, a simple one, B and not B. So those are going to be our subgoals. We are going to get, now notice what I'm going to do. We're going to get B, we're going to get not B, and then we're going to put them together so we have a simple contradiction sentence. All right, so our first goal is to get B. All right, can I get B right now? Yes, I can. Line 1 says if A is true, then B is true. And line 3 says A is true, so I already know in line 4 that B is true. I have my first subgoal, B is true. Why? It is true because I am taking apart a conditional. How many lines of justification are required? 2 lines. The conditional you took apart, line 1, and where you prove the left side by itself, line 3. I have my first subgoal. Could cross that out if you want. Now I'm after not B. Now do you see how straightforward this is? Of course, I already know that not B is true because of line 2, the conditional, and where I prove the left side in line 3, another conditional elimination. And notice the steps. I still haven't proved a contradiction yet. I still have to put those together to give it a clear contradictory sentence. So what do I simply do? I create an and out of 4 and 5. Easy. B and not B is now true. What is that? I used line 4, line 5, and created a new and. Do you see it? And so now I have a sentence that's impossible. So I assumed A, it led to something impossible, so my assumption must be wrong. That's how the rule works. I was able to derive a contradiction, and so now I can create a new negation. Not A is proven. How? Now look at the rule. We need 2 lines of justification, where you assumed the positive, where I assumed A in line 3, and where I was able to derive a contradiction in line 6. Now I was able to use my negation introduction rule, and I have discharged my assumption, so now this thing is valid and true. How did you do? All right, so look at example B. Here we are. Again, we do not worry. We know that these must have assumptions, but we don't think about that ahead of time. Remember the key thing. We do not make an assumption unless a rule tells you to. Good? So, we start our goal, we look at it, we analyze it in the usual way. That is our goal. We don't stop until we have that sentence. And then I ask my same monotonous, repetitive thing, do I see my goal in my premises? No, I don't. I don't see that sentence. So what does that tell me? I'm going to need to create this. I'm going to need to introduce a new sentence. So what am I going to introduce? I look at my main connective. It's a conditional. So obviously I'm going to need a conditional introduction. So that's going to be my map. So I look at the conditional introduction rule, and it says you start this rule by first assuming the left side of the conditional you are trying to produce. And then what do? Your next step is to derive the right side. Good? And if you can assume the left side and derive the right side, then you can create your new conditional. So there we have it. So we can already start our proof. We know what to do first. We do the first step. We assume the left side. What's the left side? A. Again, even if we had A somewhere in our premises that we could take, we don't, because we can't take the left side of a conditional. We still begin by assuming A. And again, I make a little note so I know that I am not cheating, and I tell myself that I can make that assumption because I'm going to use that rule. That assumption is not valid until I discharge it by using that rule later. So I assume A. Now I am trying to derive the right side. So now think about it as a standard proof. I am trying to derive D. So let's do our underlining technique. So here is my sub-goal. That's what I'm after. And I know that I can get D if I first prove B is true. So now my sub-goal is B. Do I see it in my premises? I can take the left side of a conditional, but look at this one over here. I can take it out of here if I do what first? Isolate B and C. I can isolate B and C if I first get what? A. So I have a whole list of goals. Here we go. So my first sub goal is to get A. I already have it. There it is. That's what I assumed. Nice coincidence, right? Jeff is so nice. So my sub goal is to get B and C, and notice I can get it from line 1. If A is true, then B and C is true. So I won't keep the parentheses. I can if I want, but I don't need them now. So I write the right side of line 1. What did I do? I took apart a conditional. I use conditional elimination requires 2 lines. The conditional you took apart and where you have derived or proven the right side. Now notice, when I say we have proven the left side, it's an assumption, but it will be okay as long as we invoke this rule by the end of the proof. As of right now, it's only temporarily true we need to see. It is pending truth. So B and C is true. I got my tertiary goal. Now what am I after? B. So I'm just going through my steps. Do you see I can take B out of line 4? Straightforward. B is true. I can always take apart an and as long as the and's the main connective. So that is my and elimination rule. How many lines of justification? Just the and you took apart, line 4. Good. So now I have my sub goal. Now I'm ready for my sub goal. Look at line 2. If B is true, then D is. I'm ready to write D. What did I do? I used a conditional elimination rule. I took apart the conditional in 2 because I proved the left side in 5. Now, look at what we've done. We assumed the left side. We were able to derive the right side of our proof. So now we can create our new conditional. A conditional D is now true based on what lines, right? So this is now our conditional introduction rule. It is based on where we assume the left side, A, in line 3, and we were able to derive the right side, D, in line 6. Based on those lines, this is now valid, and I have now, yay, discharged my assumption, and my proof is now valid and true. Hey, Jeff's hand. Do you have some cool black nail polish on your middle finger? No, I'm not that cool. I smashed my hand. Ah! Oh, sorry, I forgot. Without stereo vision, you're not good at judging distances. Sorry, Cyclops joke. Now, for fun, notice. The downside of having a mask is you lose sight of what's really beneath you. So I smashed my finger while I was putting together a card the other day. But look at this. Let's see if the camera can focus. It looks just like a cat. Do you see it? Look carefully. Right? So no, it's not cool black nail polish. But look, it looks just like a kitty. You can even see the little ears and stuff. All right, sorry. Sorry about that. Dog, right? All right, example C. We do our same thing. We look for our goal. We're going to work backwards from our goal. We're going to map out how to get to our goal from all the way back through our premises. And we're going to make notes so we only have to do one step at a time. Good? Remember, We're not focused on idea of making assumptions. We're focused on our goals. We will only make an assumption when a rule tells us to. Good. So we do our standard thing. We ask the question, do you see your goal in your premises? And I do. There it is. Oh, it's actually in 2 spots. So if I can unearth those from my premises, I will win. So we look at this. I know that if I get A, I can get E. Oh, or if I get D, I can get E. So now we have our sub-goals. Our sub-goals are to get A or to get D, and then we can get to E. So we ask again, do you see your sub-goals in your premises? And I do. There's A, and there's D. I've got them in line 1. I've just got to take them out of there. So what do we need to do? We look at line 1. What's its main connective? An OR. We're not scared because we know that we're going to have to do what? We are going to have to take apart an OR. So we simply look up that rule. Good. So this is going to be our sub-goal. We look up that rule and do what it says. What does it say to do? It says, first, assume the left side of the OR you are trying to take apart. Then it says you are trying to derive your goal or sub-goal. Good. What is our goal? E. So let's derive E. Then it says you will then assume the right side of the OR you're taking apart. And, oops, sorry, numbering is really tricky for me. Then step 4, derive the goal again. Now notice what it says. You are not done until you now instantiate your goal. You will invoke the rule only after you've done all 4 steps. So we're actually going to have our goal 3 times before we are done. So those are our steps. And now let's label our way there. So our first move is to do what the rule says. Assume the left side. So we're going to assume the left side of the OR we're taking apart. There it is. A and B. Where did I get that? That was an assumption I was told to make. I don't take it from premises. I assume it. That's what the rule said. But to be sure I am doing this legally, I make a little note to myself that that rule is legal because I'm going to use that rule. So I can make that assumption and it will be valid once I invoke that rule down the line. So step 1, we assume the left side. Now we're trying to derive a goal or sub-goal. Well, what is our goal? E. So let's try to get to E for step 2. Can I get to E? I can get to E if I get A. And do you see where I can get A? Look at line 4. It's sitting there. I can take an AND apart as long as it's the main connective. So I will take A out of line 4 really easily with my AND elimination rule. So I did that in order to get to my goal, which is E. Now look at line 2 and 5, a simple conditional elimination move. I have a conditional in 2. If A is true, then E is. So E is true. So I use my conditional in 2 because I proved the left side in 5. Now technically, did I prove it yet? No, it's based on this assumption. And so it is pending truth as long as I eventually discharge, yes, I know the word, discharge that assumption. So I was able to derive my goal the first time. Step 3, assume the right side. Here I am. There we go. C and D. Where did I get that? From the rule. I assumed it. And this will be a legal assumption as soon as I use that rule. Good. So now what is my goal? I am trying to derive my goal again. I'm trying to get E. Well, look at line 3. I need D in order to get E, and look at line 7. It's ready to take from line 7. I can get D because the AND in 7 is true, and I use the AND elimination rule. Again, make sure you're giving enough justification and you're giving the right lines. That line just requires the AND that was taken apart, line 7. So now I have D. What do? Look at line 3, a simple conditional elimination rule. I can take apart line 3 because I prove the left side is true. There it is. E is true once again because the conditional is true in line 3 and the left side is proven in line 8. Do you get it? So what have I done? I was able to assume the left side and get to E, assume the right side and get to E. So now I know third instantiation is the only one that makes it true. E is true no matter what side turns out true. I did it. I got all of my goals. Now, how do I justify this? I am going to invoke my OR elimination rule. So this is going to discharge both of my assumptions to make them legal. What lines am I looking for? Look, it's right here. I need to first instantiate the OR I took apart, line 1. Then where I assume the left side in 4. Then where I drove my goal for the first time, where I assume the right side, and where I drove my goal again in line 9. I need 5 lines of justification for that one. You did it. All right, example D, getting a little more complex, right? Hang in there. We label our goal. There it is. We ask, do we see our goal in our premises? We don't see it, so we're going to need to create it. So I look at the rule. What is our connective? We need a new negation. So we look at the negation introduction rule and do what it says. What does it say to do? It says assume the positive of our goal. Good. So we can even start, but we're looking at our rules. And then we are trying to derive a contradiction. If we derive a contradiction, then we can negate our assumption. So where do we go? So we can begin the proof right away because we know our first step. Our first step is to assume the positive, so we assume A. We make an assumption, but we make a little note to ensure that it will be legal. And so we don't forget that we can't use that assumption until we prove it with that rule. Good? So now let's see. We have A, and now we're trying to derive a contradiction. Where are we going to find one? Oh, look at this. Here is C, here is not C, and we just need to put those together. So not C is going to be easy, so let's map our way to get to C. We can get C, obviously, if we can get A and B. I don't see A and B anywhere, but it will be easy to create. Got it? I see A already in line 4, and there is B in line 1, and I know I can get to B if I have A, so I think that's enough notes. All right, here we go. So I already have A. I am trying to get B now. Can I get B right away? Yes, I can. Line 1, if A is true, then B is true because A is true in my assumption in line 4. What did I do? I used the conditional in 1 because I proved the left side in 4, and it's a conditional elimination. So I have B, I have A. What was I trying to do? Put them together with a new AND. There we go. So I simply combine lines 4 and 5 into the new AND I need to take apart line 2. Lines 4, line 5, and introduction. I created a new AND, I introduced an AND. Because I have A and B, I can now take apart line 2 and get C by itself. Line 2 is the conditional. Line 6 is where I prove the left side. I took apart another conditional. So let's see, there I have C. What was I trying to do? Derive a contradiction. Look at lines 3 and 7. If I put those together, I have an obvious contradiction. What did I do? Now notice I'm not worried about number order. I took line 7 and line 3 and created a new AND again. That is a contradiction. I assumed A, led to a contradiction, so what do I know now? Not A must be true. That is my goal. Now I just need to instantiate it. I used my negation introduction rule. What am I looking for? Where I assume the positive in line 4 and where it led to a contradiction in 8. And this allows me to discharge, yay, discharge my assumption. I win. All right, E, it's getting pretty scary, but I just follow what Jeff says. I trust that guy. I am looking for this goal. I don't stress, I just ask my question. Do I see my goal in my premises? No, I don't. So I know I'm going to need to create this conditional. So I look at the rule and do what it says. I am using the conditional introduction rule, and it says what you do is assume the left side, derive the right side, and then you can create your new conditional. So I already know my first step. My first step is to assume the left side of my conditional I'm trying to create. So I assume A. That is an assumption. I make a little note that this assumption will be legal once I use this rule that required the assumption. And so now I do my normal thing. I am looking for my subgoal. What is my subgoal? The right side of my conditional. So my subgoal is to get negative D. Do I see it? Oh, there it is. And there it is again. All right. So I can get my subgoal if I get either B or C by itself. So now my sub-goal is to get B or C. Where do I see it? There it is. My sub-goal is right there. It's an OR. I'm going to need to take that OR apart. Good? So let's get that OR isolated and then see how to work. So if A is true, then B or C is true. So let me do that step first. I know that the sentence B or C is true because the conditional in 1 is true, and I prove the left side in 4. That is simply a conditional elimination rule. You see it? We just took apart the conditional. Now what do we do? Our sub-goals are to get B and get C in order to get to negative D. What are we doing? Taking apart an OR. So let's map that out. In order to take apart an OR, what do? I assume the left. I derive my goal. Then I assume the right. I derive my goal. And then I can instantiate that my goal is true. So notice, this is really involved. We are going through our checklist. So far I assumed the left side because I'm still working on this, but now I have a side map, right? A little derivative map where I'm doing this now. So what do I do first? I assume the left side of the OR I'm taking apart. So I assume B. Why did I assume B? That's an assumption. I assume that because I am using this rule. Do you see it? This is me working on this OR elimination rule. I'm taking apart the OR in line 5. So I tried to assume the left side to derive my goal. Well, what's my sub-goal? Negative D. I have B, so I can take negative D out of line 2. Do you see it? The conditional in 2, prove the left side in 6. That is a conditional elimination. Hope you're hanging in there. So we were able to derive our goal from the left side. Now what do? Assume the right side. I assume C, the right side of the OR I'm taking apart. Why? An assumption. I make a little note so that I know this will be legal as soon as I use the rule. I assume the right side. Now I'm trying to derive my goal. What is my sub-goal? Negative D. Look at it. It's ready to take out of line 3. I have the conditional in 3 because I drove the right side in line 8. That is a conditional elimination. I took apart line 3. What did I do? I was able to derive my goal again. Because I was able to derive it from either side of the OR, the goal can now be instantiated as true. Notice I write it 3 times. Negative D is now true. Why? Because I used the OR elimination rule. I'm discharging both of my assumptions, and now I need to carefully justify it with the right 5 lines. What are they? The OR we took apart, line 5. Where we were able to derive our goal for the first time, line 7. Then, oh, sorry. I screwed up. Go back. Good. I have my original OR, where I assumed the left side in 6, where I drove my goal in 7, where I assumed the right side in 8 and was able to derive my goal for a second time in 9. I am so sorry for that mistake. Please, I'm glad I caught it quick. I hope you caught it when I did it. That would prove you were getting this. So, I finished my OR elimination. What was my original move? This. I was working on a conditional introduction. I assumed the left side. I was able to derive the right side. So now I can instantiate my goal. I now know that A conditional negative D is true. Because I assumed the left side in a 4, I was able to derive. Notice, it was only true once I did it in line 10. In line 10, I was able to derive the right side. So now this conditional is true. I invoke my rule, conditional introduction, and I discharge that original assumption. So all of those assumptions have been discharged. I have a valid proof. Good. All right. Last one. And finally, example F. Hopefully you looked at this. If any of you were able to do this without my help, you are brilliant. You trusted me. You used the same strategy we always use. Good. Don't be spooked. This has no premises. This is a theorem. We look at our goal. This is our goal. We label it so we don't forget that we need this whole thing before we have made this proof. And we ask what we always ask. Do we see our goal in our premises? Do you see them? No, Jeff, there are no premises. No problem. We then do what we would normally do. I don't see my goal in my premises, so I know I will need to create it. I will need to create a conditional. So I go and look at the conditional introduction rule, and I make a map and do what it says. What does it say to do? It says, assume the left side of the conditional you are trying to create, and then derive the right side, and then you can create the new conditional. So there we have it. So what do we do first? We first assume the left side of the conditional we are trying to create. There it is. So we assume A and B. Where did that come from? It was an assumption. We assumed it because we are going to use this rule. So it will be valid once we discharge the assumption by using that rule. All right. So now what is our subgoal? We assume the left side, and now we are trying to derive the right side. We are trying to derive A or B. Do you see your goal in your premises? No, I don't. So where am I going to find my subgoal? Well, I'm going to create it. So I look at my, I should be using red. So I look at my OR introduction rule. What does that rule say? It says that you can derive a new OR as long as you know that one side of it is true. Well, that's pretty easy. I just need to get A or B by itself and then create the new OR. Well, I see it. I can easily take that out of line 1. I will take A, could have taken B, really easy. I take A out of line 1. That is simple, simply line 1 and elimination. If I have A, then I can create my subgoal OR. I can now say that A or B is true because I proved one side of my new OR in line 2, OR introduction. Easy. So what have I done? I assumed the left side. I was able to derive the right side. So now I can create my new conditional. A and B, conditional, A or B. Now I just need to instantiate the rule. This is my conditional introduction. When I justify it appropriately, that will discharge my assumptions. I have where I assume the left side in 1 and where I was able to derive the right side in 3. My proof is done. I've created a theorem. I have made a proof with no premises from scratch. Yay! That's it. You did it. You have finished my class. You are going to do well on the final exam. If there are some of you that really love these proofs, you are just a super big nerd like me. I will put some extra hard ones just for fun, and maybe I'll find some way to give you an extra credit proof if you can do something really tricky. But thank you so much for taking my class. I miss you. I hope this was okay. I don't normally teach online, right? So please know that I tried my best. Thank you so much for taking my class. Bye.